All right, I don't know who let some, I don't even say let the cat out of the bag because it's not a true statement, and told people, or who's been telling people that I'm a fan of Ford powered Fords, because this is completely out of hand. They have overran my garage. But that's cool because some of them, well, all of them actually, are pretty fun and exciting to work on and unique in their own ways. They're all just a bunch of snowflakes. Each one is special. And this special little snowflake right here belongs to my buddy Taylor. And this car is a 99 to 04, doesn't really matter. I think it's an 03, 04, judging by the color. Is that mineral gray or dark shadow gray? I can't tell, but it's pretty much irrelevant. They're all the same underneath of them. But what we have here is a car that came to me about 75–80% finished. And he just said, hey man, I'm out of time. Can you push this thing across the finish line for me? Because I want to drive it across the finish line. And that's what we're going to do. And you can see we got a lot of nice stuff here. We're going to go over this and do a little run around on the whole car. First and foremost is this. And if you know anything about those initials, TKM, stands for the Kevin Mullins, then you know that that name is synonymous with big power and hot, nasty speed. And this one is 5 liters displacement. It's an aluminum textured block that's been bored out and sleeved and displaces 5 liters. We got a set of trick flow heads hiding underneath all this stuff. This is why I don't like mod motors that much, because they're just so freaking bulky. They're so big. Like the cubic yardage they displace in the engine bay does not, I don't know, it doesn't add up to the displacement of the engine on the inside in my book. But the reason they're so damn big is because it's got 2 cams on top of the heads. And these heads are trick flow heads, custom camshaft to work with the turbocharger right here. Speaking of turbos, this is a VS Racing 88103. I've had this turbo in the past. It's pretty decent. I've made some good power with it and gone relatively quick. So it should fit the build nicely with this. This whole turbo kit was fabricated by a gentleman named Jonathan Haymore over at Johnny B Fab. The turbo kit looks great. It looks really good. CG headers, fully TIG welded stainless. He was smart and used these sick trick little vibrant clamps that you can actually take off without the use of any tools. It's an air to water intercooler setup on the thing, water tank in the back. So this car basically came no wiring and no plumbing. The tubular front end on it was already done. All the components were kind of mounted where they're supposed to be. And then I have been wiring this car and plumbing the car. So pretty much all the hoses and the wires that you see on here. We got the custom length fire core wires from, shout out to Rick Gorski for hooking those up. We have a set of Holley smart coils feeding these fire core wires. We used a standard Holley Dominator harness, and I've done a little bit of custom tweaks on it to slim it down. Courtesy of the gentleman over at Jolt Systems, Ryan Hoffman hooked it up. He makes these custom harnesses for Holley smart coils that are plug and play for you mod motor guys. So the stuff that you get from Holley, they're just like, I don't know, you figure it out. Which is not terribly hard to do. But this is custom application specifically for this car. And using his harnesses, you can actually trim down the main Holley harness and get rid of these crazy coil drivers that you're required to run the coil unplug stuff from Ford. More electrical goodness going on inside here. Like I alluded to earlier, we have a Holley Dominator ECU. It's gonna fit right behind the dash panel here once the factory dash goes back in, and you pop the airbag cover off and you'll have full access to it. My goal here for Taylor is that you never have to lay underneath the dash to work on the car. I'm 6'5", Taylor's a big boy, he's just as tall as I am, and I can't stand having to lay down over a roll bar, roll cage, and try to get under the dash to work on something. I tucked all my wiring on my personal car underneath the dash, and I absolutely hate it. Every time I need to get in there, it sucks. So with his car, I'm doing it a little bit different. So powering up most of the chassis stuff here, we're gonna use an ARC module, ARC panel, whatever you wanna call it, their relay board. This thing, remote mount the relays themselves, and then you control them using this little panel. It's got like microwave buttons. These things are actually relatively inexpensive for most of the wiring. It makes it simple. They just have a 12-volt output to run to whatever accessories you need to turn on or off, to include a starter. It gives you 8 individual circuits. The first one is default as a starter, so just the on, starts, a momentary button. And then these are just on, off, and you can label them as such. So we're gonna run off of this car. I'll be running the starter, the ignition, intercooler, water pump, fans, and then a few other maintenance items on the car. Like I'm gonna have it where it has dome lights all over. It lights up the whole car like the 4th of July. So it's easy to work on and see anything, make shock adjustments. For the fan and the water pump, I'm using the Leash Electronics dual relay board. These have dual 70 amp relays, so these things are beefy. You can use these to run big fuel pumps and big fans, and they won't burn up like a normal 40 amp relay. These little guys right here are only rated to 40. These little ones, each one of these can handle 70 amps or whatever J-case fuse that you put on the thing. So the fans and the water pump are going to be dual controlled by the ARC module as well as the Holley. I went ahead and printed out the pinouts for the J4 and J3 connectors so I can figure out what outputs and write them down as I go before I start building the harness. And yes, if you are paying attention, this car has 3 pedals and it is retaining the stick shift. That is a TIC Performance face-plated T56 Magnum, and that is a staging handbrake. To the best of our knowledge, this car in its previous version was the record holder, I think it still is technically the record holder, for the quickest and fastest H-pattern 4.6 liter modular motor 2-valve dark shadow minimal grade turbocharged Mustang in North Carolina in the world. All jokes and internet records aside, the car is going to haul some serious ass. And if you've been paying attention to H-pattern or the stick shift racing game, it's kind of hot right now with some of the heavy hitters out there running well into the mid to low 7s. And that is what Taylor's goal is. So the car, once it's done here, it will be going in for some chassis updates. The car currently just has a 6-point roll bar in it, not even a cage. So yes, Taylor is taking safety very seriously now because we have a SPA Technique. Shout out to Jason Digby over there and Eric Yost at Customs by Biggin and Mag Fabworks for hooking it up. This is a full 10-pound fire suppression system. It'll have 2 nozzles under the hood and 2 nozzles spraying onto the driver, as well as the ability to automatically release and discharge all over the driver, just all over him. He's not going to take any shots to the face because nobody wants that. You want to be able to see in the event of an emergency, but safety is of the utmost concern with him now, because Taylor's getting married, and I'm pretty sure his lovely fiance is making sure that he's going to be around for a long time. So that is why the panel on here is made out of just a piece of Kydex plastic and zip tied on here. This is not a permanent solution. I'm leaving enough slack so that when they do the chassis, they can remove it, get it out of the way, and then put it back in and make like a carbon panel or an aluminum panel, whichever one he decides to go with. Chassis wise, we have Viking Crusader shocks and struts all the way around, aerospace component brakes front and back, a bitchin' set of Weld V-Series with single bead locks on the back, 15 by 12, and a 275 radial. A radial on a stick car? Are you kidding me? Well, that's what all the fast guys are doing, and the way they're getting down is through the use of a slipper clutch. This car will have a black magic clutch installed. We are waiting for that to come in. In the back here, it's pretty much standard issue stuff. Ice tank for the air-to-water intercooler already plumbed. I ran these hoses. The size of the hose, big girthy hose, okay? Big 1-inch hose. You want to be able to flow a lot of water. Inside of here, the pump is a Rule pump. I don't know the flow rating on it. It's the big one. It's one of the big boys. Battery kill switch, standard issue stuff right here. And then this is another. Should probably secure that. Another Leash Electronics relay board is going to be powering 2 Magna Fuel 4303 750 pumps. Okay, I'm waiting for all the fuel lines and filters to come in. Previously, this car had no filter on it before, and it was having issues where the pumps were burning up. So we're going to hopefully alleviate that altogether. Parachute already installed. And in the back, TMZ upper and lower control arms, and then a full built rear end. This is actually built by my homie Eric Yost over at Customs by Biggin. It's braced, fully welded. Internally, I don't know what it's got, but it's got big 9-inch ends on it, 5/8-inch wheel studs. Pretty serious stuff. Taylor is not, how do you say, mucking about with it. Now, all of that is a bunch of race car stuff, but this isn't just a race car. He's going to street drive this thing with a face-plated transmission, and that makes me very excited. I think I just spit on myself. Hopefully the camera caught that. In order to make this street stuff work, I put this over here. This is a power distribution module from RaceWire Solutions, and this controls all of your lights and your horn, turn signals, headlights, high beam, low beam, parking lights, all off of that column mounted panel, that little doohickey right there. I wanted to do something a little bit different with this one. So the reason this is on this side and not over there is because, one, real estate is tight, and two, I just kind of wanted to isolate the chassis wiring side of the house completely from anything that makes the car run and move down the road. So if you have issues with your lights, you don't need to be over here messing around on this side of the car. You know exactly where you need to go. I mean, most automobile manufacturers do that, where you put the engine controls and the fuses and everything underneath the hood of the car, and then everything else, as far as like your lights, your turn signals, interior of the car, that fuse box is in the inside. So in my head, it made sense when I did it. So we still got a little bit of work left to do on here. I'm working on finishing up the brakes right here. I have the brake line tucked up underneath the cowl. They no longer run under the front of the car like it did from the factory. We have manual brake conversion right here, and then goes down into the line lock, which I need to install the brake light pressure switch because I need to hook up, this is for the brake lights and the horn. And the Willwood proportioning valve, I need to make the hard line go down to the bottom. I got a quick, let me show you guys a little sweet tech tip. So when I was trying to put this on here, mount it to the wall, the knob was too close. I know it's dark and it's hard to see, but the knob was too close to the firewall and I couldn't adjust it, so I needed some spacers. Check this out. Okay, so I know some of you guys like the tech tips and stuff like that, and I kind of just stumbled upon this, and I'm really impressed with my own genius. I need to mount this brake proportioning valve on this car, and where I'm going to mount it, if I mount it completely flat and just bolt it to the firewall where I'm putting it, it's not going to let me turn the knob. It needs to be spaced off a little bit. Usually a lot of people just mount these off of the master cylinder. In this case, I'm trying to keep it look clean and tidy in the engine bay, so I'm kind of remote mounting it further down the line. So I need some spacers. Usually what I would do is just take a piece of tubing, brake line tubing. In this case, I have a piece of tubing. This is, I think, 3/8 hard line for like fuel line. And you can just take this, and usually I would just cut it with a grinder, cut off the size of the piece that I need. I like doing this instead of stacking washers. Stacking washers just looks less. This gives it a better, cleaner, finished product. And then I was like, well, the problem I always have with a grinder is it's really hard for me to cut straight. It's not the most accurate thing. So it kind of like, the cuts come out crooked, and then you're sanding them flat, and then it's just a pain in the ass. But with this, I was like, well, it's a fuel line. It's just a piece of tubing. I can use these little tubing cutters, but this is kind of thick wall tubing. So I was like, man, I'm gonna be here cutting for a while. And then the light bulb went off. So the way this works, if you've never seen it, it's got two little rollers down here that cradle the piece of tube in like a pizza cutter wheel. And you turn it a little bit, increase the pressure on the knob, you turn it, increase the pressure, turn it, blah, blah, blah. And it starts to put a little line in it. And I was like, well, then the light bulb went off, and I said, how can we speed this process up? We automate it, almost. I've already done this, it works great. You don't wanna go too fast because you don't wanna burn this up, but tighten a little, tighten a little. Boom! A perfectly flat cut and perfectly, precisely, I don't know, whatever, the exact same size as the other spacer. And they're flat. So now I can go and mount my proportioning valve, and it will space it off of the firewall just enough that you can adjust it. My genius knows no bounds. So there you go. Free little tech tip for you. It's mounted. I can turn the knob and just run this hard line underneath the car and pass that through the hydraulic handbrake on the inside. Anyway, so this car is slowly but surely coming together. We have a dyno appointment over at TKM scheduled in about a week and a half. So as you can see, I got a lot of shit to do. The next time you see this car, it will be turning the rollers. And the next on the chopping block is another Ford. But this one is substantially girthier.